The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Tuesday. I'm so excited to be here with you. We are going to be live for the next 2 hours talking about autism and how you and I and everyone within the scope of our hearing can be more efficient, more effective in all the things that we do, including working with a child on the autism spectrum, including working with a teenager on the autism spectrum, including being better at the things that we do. And if you are somebody who's on the autism spectrum and an adult and wanting to be better at some of the things that you're encountering that are difficult for you, we want to be helpful in terms of that, but really helpful for everyone to reach our fullest potential, all of us. A lot of what we talk about here is based in ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. We know that ABA is an age-old science that is used for many things besides autism, but it happens to also have been scientifically proven to be effective in treating autism to help children to reach their fullest potential. That's different for all children. We know that all of our kids are individual and their outcomes are different because where they start is different, their rate of growth is different, the amount of time that they have to devote to ABA is different, but we know that there's going to be progress for anyone on the spectrum, off the spectrum, if they're using the principles of ABA on a regular basis. So we do talk about that, but we talk about everything having to do with autism. We talk about the emotional strain of autism. Whether you're the individual who has the autism spectrum diagnosis or you're an individual who's working with someone who has an autism spectrum diagnosis, there's a level of stress, there is a level of financial concern, and an emotional toll as well. So we talk about all of that and how we can hopefully make sense of it all, from having to worry about what to put on the table and to figure out how to get it on the table, right? We talk about everything. So I want to remind all of you that this show is meant to be interactive and that while we're talking about all these things, we're really hoping for your input and for you to participate. And Emily's going to cycle through some of the different ways that you can participate with us, whether it's a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to see covered on the show. We really are very interested in your opinion. While she's showing you some of the different ways that you can interact with us, I want to remind you that there's only one place that you can watch us live, and that is www.autism-live.com. And when you visit us there, you see a desktop and you have the ability, without logging in, when we're live, you can just put your cursor in the box that it says questions we're answering right now and type away there, hit enter, and it shows up here magically on my screen. As I said, you do not have to log in. You do not have to give us your credit card number. We're not looking for your address or your phone number. We don't even know your name. So type whatever you want in there. If you do want to send us information to be able to get back to you, you can put it there. I have a way of filtering before I show it to the rest of the audience so that I can take private information and put it to the side. So do feel free to let us know if there's a contact place when you're using that feature, or you can just email us, right? Lots of different ways to participate, but we always appreciate your participation. I want to remind you as we start the show that I am not an expert in autism. I am not an expert in ABA. I am not a therapist. I'm certainly not a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. I'm not a nutritionist. Oh my goodness. What does that leave? I am the mom of a young boy who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. So that's what my passion is. My role here is not to be the expert, but to facilitate hooking you up with people who have expertise in different fields, whether it's a parent who's been through something, because, there is expertise in having gone through the experience, or hooking you up with a doctor who can diagnose your child, a financial expert who can help you to work your way through this, somebody who works for a foundation who's giving out grants. I want to hook you up with the information that's going to make your life easier. And that's really important to me, because heaven knows when we started out on this journey, my husband and I clung to each other. We felt like we were in a rainstorm. That's literally how I always visualized it in my head, is that, our little family, the three of us, was standing in a parking lot in a torrential rainstorm going, what do we do? What do we do? And eventually we got great help, the best help. And as a result, my son is doing really well. And, part of my whole deal in this is that I remember Nancy Alsbaugh-Jackson talks about the kitchen floor club. And I remember when I was on the kitchen floor, because that's what the kitchen floor club did. At some point we were on the kitchen floor, not in the actual rainstorm, but on the kitchen floor saying, somebody help me. And one of the things that I said, and I know that Nancy said the same thing, help me and help my child, and I will find a way I'll figure it out, some way that I can help other people. And so that's why I'm here. Know that. And that is a sacred truth for me, that I want to help you in any way that I can, as best as I can. Granted, I'm only human and I have my limitations too, but know that I do care. And there are so many people who care. You are not in this alone. There are people who care. So please participate in the way that works for you. No pressure, but if there's something you just wish you knew better, if there's something that you don't understand, please participate. And I always say this, that you might think, oh, well, I don't know, that question, it doesn't sound like the smartest question. It doesn't sound like the question to ask. But you know what? Sometimes when you ask a question and other people see it, it opens up a whole world to them. They didn't even know to ask that question, didn't know that that existed. I can remember somebody asking a question about methyl B12. I'd never heard of that. I would never have asked a question about methyl B12 because I didn't know what methyl B12 was. And as a result of them asking that question and me hearing the answer of that, I started asking questions about methyl B12, and it was something that ended up being good for my individual child. But if you don't know what to ask, you're kind of left at sea. So don't be afraid of asking the question that you're asking, because not only will it potentially help you, but it has the great potential to help many others. Okay, so there's my spiel about that. We do like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out just what it means and put it in perspective of using it with our individual experiences, our individual child. And the jargon really overwhelmed me early on. I'll be very honest with you, and I was angry at the jargon, and I was angry at anybody who used the jargon. I now have gone to the dark side, and I appreciate the jargon in a way that I didn't, because I have begun to understand it, and I hope that you will too. How do we do this? Just the way we teach our children. Take it in little bite-sized morsels, break it down into really easy to handle amounts so that we can begin to learn and string these things together. So, our phrase today, yesterday we did non-contingent reinforcement, so today we have differential reinforcement. Oh, I know, your head kind of hurts immediately, right? But this is important, and even if you don't remember the term itself and get confused about it, because I certainly did for a long time, it's important to know what it is that we're talking about and to be practicing it. Okay, so let's take a look at our actual definition, and we might even make fun of it. Differential reinforcement, providing reinforcement only for those responses within a response class that meet a specific criterion along some dimension or dimensions. For example, frequency, topography, duration, latency, or magnitude, and placing all other responses in the class on extinction. Yes, let's make fun of that definition, shall we? And early on, I would see something like this, because I am somebody who will use a dictionary and will Google things because I'm curious. And I would see something like this and go, really? Really, there was no way that they could make this definition any more user-friendly, which is why we do this every morning. So that's our actual definition, and I appreciate that. But let's take a look at what our working definition is. Let's see if we can't make heads or tails out of this. Being mindful and specific about what you are rewarding so that only responses that meet specific criteria are rewarded and all other responses are ignored. Okay, so let's imagine for a second that we've got a child that we're working with, and we're starting with real basics, right? And in the beginning, maybe we start with a Colis, and we're trying to get the child to just repeat a sound that we make. Before we're working on labels and things like that, we want to see if the child can utter sounds. And so in the beginning, maybe our hope is to get the child to say bubbles, because they find bubbles very reinforcing. They love bubbles. They want the bubbles. You get the bubble thing out, and you can see the excitement in my child. We show a little snippet of video almost every day that you may not even realize it's my child, and he's running up to the camera because I was blowing bubbles, and he was making a noise because he wanted the bubbles, and he was working so hard to get any noise out because he couldn't say bubbles. So he was going to let me know that he wanted the bubbles. Well, in the beginning, we might reinforce that just because it's a sound. And it's a sound that's paired with that he wants the bubbles. So in the beginning, the very beginning for a child, we might get them to make any sound, or we might work on ba, 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 right? If we can get the child to say ba. Now, that's not our be-all, end-all, right? But in the beginning, we're going to reinforce that. So the child says ba, and we blow the bubbles, and we pair it with praise, and we go, yay, and the child's all happy and excited. If that's where we kept the goalpost forever, we wouldn't expect to see the child make growth, right? We have to keep moving the goalpost a little bit at a time. And we stop reinforcing, when we move the goalpost, we stop reinforcing what we were reinforcing before. Remember that in this case, the reinforcement is actually blowing and having the bubbles come out. So if we start with the right, and we're reinforcing that, and then we move to the ba, 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 and we reinforce that, we're moving the goalpost. That's differential reinforcement. And we stop reinforcing the, because we want to make it a little bit harder. Not leaps and bounds harder, but just a little bit harder and a little bit harder, and you keep moving it away. So when we see a little bit later on when we watch the A word today, in the beginning, they were doing some sign with Jack Riley, and then at a certain point, they were asking him to use one word so that if he wanted more of something, he was saying more, or saying the label for the thing eventually, maybe saying juice, or toy, or train, or whatever the one word was, and no longer were they reinforcing the sign, right? So now they were reinforcing the more, or the label, and then they started putting it in a frame and having him say, I want, and maybe train or more train or whatever it was. They keep making it a little bit harder. We do this all the time in real life, right? We do it with ourselves, we do it with other people, because we're teaching, and we're sort of pushing to make you work a little bit harder. Imagine if you were trying to get somebody to run a marathon, right? And on the first day you had a plan, because you weren't going to just have them run a marathon on the first day. That would be unbelievably unsuccessful, right? You'd never get it done unless they were already in tip-top shape. Even then, I don't think there's anybody who has never run a marathon before who could just run out and run 27 miles on the first day, right? It would be dangerous. But you would start by having a plan and say, okay, today we're going to run this much, and you would want to make sure that you reinforce that, right? And then you would keep making it a little bit further and a little bit further, and you would keep reinforcing, and you would not go back to reinforcing the first little thing. That's differential reinforcement. You keep moving the goalpost, moving the reinforcement a little further away, making the person having to work a little bit harder. So this is what I said, super duper important that we understand the concept and that we be doing it, and that we're doing it with our individual children, but we don't necessarily hug the phrase, right? But now you know what it is. So when you hear somebody talking about, well, we're using differential reinforcement with your child, then you'll have a little bit better understanding of it. That's why we do the jargon of the day. This is important stuff. Okay, we always have a question for you. Our question today, and it's a tough question today because sometimes we ask things and not everyone will participate because not everyone is experiencing this. But the reason why we ask this question today is because some of you are, and I need for those of you who do experience this with your child to write in so that others will see that this is something that you can work towards. Our question, of course, is how does your child show compassion? Now, depending on the age and the skill level of your child, they may not. You may not be seeing this. That does not mean that it's never going to be there. I remember early on somebody asking me, how does your child show compassion? And he was very, very little and had lost all of his language. And my initial response was, well, he doesn't. And they really kind of poked and prodded. And then as I thought about it, I thought, well, you know, that's not entirely true. That whenever my son was very in tune to babies and I could take him anywhere. And if he heard a baby crying really far away, he would immediately orient towards that and be distressed. And if you think about that is a form of compassion. Now, did I always realize that that's what it was? I did not. And there were times when my child would show distress and I would not know what was happening, but it was because there was a child somewhere who was crying. And I eventually was able to put two and two together and come up with that. And that is a form of compassion, that he was having these emotions about the fact that they were in distress. When he was old enough and had the skill level to be able to language that, the distress would come and he would have words and he would say, help the baby, right? And then we began, when his receptive language got good enough, we were able to say to him, you know, when a baby cries, it's not always that they're being hurt. And that was a really tough thing for him to be able to understand. He still will orient towards a baby crying now. But he now, at the age of 9, has a checklist of, oh, when a baby is crying, it means that they're either tired or hungry or gassy, they're uncomfortable in some way, or there is the potential that a baby is being hurt, but that's a very specific cry, and you don't hear that very often. Interesting to see how that has shaped up for him. I won't lie to you and tell you that my child is the most compassionate child on the planet. It's very interesting what he shows compassion towards and what he doesn't notice, right? But I think that's kind of typical of 9-year-old and 9-year-old boys. I will say that because I see that with other children who are not on the spectrum. But my child does show compassion. And I think it is a very important thing for us to shape up in children. There are lessons that we can do to teach compassion. It's all part of that perspective taking, which is really complicated in that it has lots of different components. But it's not complicated in terms of we can get it done if we just start and teach it a little bit at a time. But I'll be looking forward later on to read your responses. And I know I've had an opportunity to look already to some of them and people saying my child doesn't and that it's frustrating. So I really hope that those of you who do have a child who displays it will take the opportunity to let others know. And even how it began and how you've taught it and how you've shaped it. Okay, we always have a topic of the week, our topic of the day, our topic of the week. This week is compassion in action. Compassion is a very important part of our lives. It's a part that we need to nurture. And it has especially been brought home to me lately that when you're in the middle of something yourself, it has the potential to do one of two things. It can either wear your compassion thin so that you say to yourself, I don't have time to deal with everybody else because I've got something going on here. I always like to use the expression about when your kitchen is on fire, right? You don't have time to donate to the local bake sale when your kitchen is on fire. And that's the truth, right? But as you get your kitchen fire tamed down to a place where it's manageable and you can once again cook in your kitchen, maybe you don't have all your cabinets back installed, you begin to have huge compassion for the fact that other people have had kitchen fires. There are people in some places around the world that don't even have a kitchen. There are people who don't have indoor plumbing, right? Your compassion grows as a result of what you've been through. And then, and only then, because when your kitchen is on fire, you can't be helping other people, right? We know that. But only then, when you start to have some things under control, you feel that compassion. And one of the greatest things you can do for yourself is to put that compassion in action. There's nothing that feels better than being able to do something for someone else, especially when you've been through the mill yourself. And heaven knows that if you've got a diagnosis of autism, or there's somebody in your family that has a diagnosis of autism, you've been through some stuff. You know it and I know it, right? But if there's a way that we can get into helping others, whether it's just by answering a question so that others can learn from it, or as I was saying yesterday, baking a loaf of bread for somebody across the street, or offering to run somebody an errand, or being nice to someone, saying something nice to somebody that you see is struggling, it's all compassion in action, and we feel better when we do it. So we're setting up the challenge for ourselves here at Autism Live and asking you to participate in as well. We've got a 2-month stretch here leading up to April 2nd, which is World Autism Awareness Day, and reminding everybody that that day is really important, but every day is important. And that when we have compassion for everyone, not just individuals on the autism spectrum, and not just people in our community, when we have compassion and we demonstrate it, it's that karma thing. What you put out comes back to you ×2, and we're always asking for compassion for our kids. Well, we can put compassion in action first and set an example in all things. So we're going to be talking about that a lot in the next 2 months leading up to that World Autism Awareness Day. And to that end, some of the different things that we're going to be talking about today, we have a healthy eating tip coming up for you. And we've got a new app for autism that we're going to be demoing. We have a special guest that's going to be joining us right after the break. Ashley Colis will be with us to show us Camp Discovery. This is a free app that I think you're really going to like. And a little bit later on today, a little later than we normally have her on, we're going to have Evelyn Gould, who is a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. And she's going to be coming in following up on some questions that were started last week. We're going to be talking about safety protocols, especially for older kids, for teenagers, and about bullying. We're talking about bullying because this all goes hand in hand with compassion. So lots to talk about, lots to do. Participate away. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back with Ashley Colis showing us Camp Discovery. Stick with us.
My wife, Lori Frost, and I developed PECS over 25 years ago. The idea was to help very young children with autism and other disabilities be able to learn how to functionally communicate, that is, interact with other people. There had been a lot of work on picture-based systems then, but they all involved teaching children to point to pictures. And a lot of children with autism would interact with a picture, but continue to ignore the people around them. So the simple idea in the beginning was to motivate the child to want something, figure out what does he really like. It could be something to eat, something to play with, something to do. And then teach him, instead of grabbing for that thing, pick up that one picture in front of you, hand it to the nice person next to you, and they'll give you what you want. And that was the very beginning of PECS. Everyone has that fear about either interfering with speech or blocking the development of speech using picture systems, PECS, or even sign language. The reality is people have looked for that problem for over 40 years, and no one has found any evidence of it. So when I speak to parents, I don't even wait for them to tell me what they're afraid of. I tell them I know what you're afraid of. But many other people have had the same fear. So we've looked for this very, very carefully. And the problem, especially in autism, is not that the child can't speak, is that he doesn't communicate. He doesn't interact with other people to get things done. We're often like furniture. So if I'm holding candy, great, I can take the candy out of your hand. But if the candy is on top of the table and I can't reach it, I'm just going to keep trying to climb on the table. I'm not going to turn to mom and look at her and look at the candy and point, or I'm just going to deal with that candy in and of itself. So the whole point about PECS is, no, people are important. You have to interact with people. Gives them lots of chances to then be near us, listen to what we're saying, practice making sounds, putting sounds together. There are a lot of skills that are needed to get speech going. It's not just one day the kid's going to look and say, thanks, Mom, you've been great. You know, it comes in really slowly for typically developing children. We don't think of it that way because we don't notice how much teaching we're doing with typical children. It seems natural. But research shows that by the time a typical child's about 2 years old, they've practiced using their voice about 1 million to 1.5 million times. That's a lot of work. So with PECs, especially for the younger children, we need to get that interaction going. Of course, we're going to work on everything that gets speech going. The reality is, though, some children never develop speech, and we don't know why. Anyone who guarantees that I'm going to make your non-speaking child talk in 6 months or a year, they're not being ethical because they cannot make that guarantee. We watched, over 80 children in the Delaware public school system learning PECs when they were younger than 5 years old, and the vast majority of them acquired speech. And the ones who were acquiring speech eventually developed just as much speech as the kids who had some speech coming in. They had the same kind of outcomes. Same number of kids went on to regular school who had a little bit of speech coming in versus had none and started on PECs. So again, learning to use PECs never interfered with acquiring speech or making that tremendous academic gain that a lot of us would like to look.
And in the meantime, when you get the functional communication skills going, the payoff is that you get less challenging behavior and the ability to work on more things, right?
Yes, I mean, that's been like a freebie. Yeah. Obviously we need to sometimes do a functional assessment to figure out why is he doing that. But there's also studies showing that just teaching functional communication with PECs leads to improved performance. It's not magic. It doesn't happen for everything.
It feels magic to parents.
Oh, it does. And it feels that way. Hey, it doesn't hurt as much either.
Right.
We know everybody likes technology, and technology can be beneficial. So everybody wants an iPad. It's really cool. The risk, of course, is that some children with autism will learn how to play with an iPad and then be more isolated. So our concern is to make sure that any kind of app for an iPad uses the same principles that we've built into PECs. So the first app that we have for an iPad that's going to come out this summer is just designed to help with discrimination. It will not be a full communication system, but sometimes children have trouble with choosing an apple versus sock. And one of the critical issues for effective learning is feedback, getting quick feedback. The nice thing about an iPad is we've essentially programmed the device that as soon as the child touches the right picture, it lights up, it grows bigger, it says a word, so it gives them immediate feedback like, yeah, you've done something really good. Of course, we follow through with giving them the item, but the device is quicker than anybody can be. So then probably in the fall sometime we'll come up with an app that it's more comprehensive, but it's really designed for children who already have some sentence structure and beyond. That is, there's no research showing that using any of these devices leads to quicker initial acquisition of vocabulary, but it certainly helps with the expansion of vocabulary for some kids. Go to PECs.com. You can get to the U.S. company there. We have offices in 13 countries and around the world, so if people speak another language, they can just go find the language of their choice and probably get to a company that's speaking that language too.
Welcome back to Autism Live. If you're hearing a little background music, it's because we've got an app running in the background here that we're going to show you. First of all, we want to welcome Ashley Colis back to Autism Live.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you for being back. I mentioned yesterday that we had you on the show before talking about babysitting and how to get great babysitters. So thrilled to have Ashley back with us. And you've got an app to show us today that's a free app that uses the principles of ABA, and we're teaching labels. Now, is this primarily for kids that are a little bit younger and sort of starting out?
Yeah, it would be for kids who are younger, starting out, and the labels are things in the home and in the community, so they're categorized that way. So you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to teach.
So really basic kind of stuff, really usable stuff. We're not doing stuff that isn't going to have an impact on our lives. We're really trying to teach things that have a practical application.
Yes.
Okay.
And we wanted to choose definitely a functional thing.
Yeah.
That things that you're going to use and things that have a function in your daily life or your child's daily life, so that they're not just abstract.
Right.
Kind of.
Right. If we're going to play on technology, let's have it count for something.
Right, definitely.
Now, I had an opportunity to play this with my son the other night, and he's not the age range or the skill level that's appropriate for it, but he was having some good fun with it, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But it's called Camp Discovery, and you can get this where?
You can get it in the iTunes store right now. It's only available on iPad. So if you try to search for it on your phone, you won't find it.
Okay.
So, but it will be available in that format, and then also in the Android version as well.
Okay, and we'll let you guys know that. But right now it's free in the App Store, the iTunes App Store. And I see here that we're on the home page for it because we've downloaded it on our iPad here, and I've got 4 different levels.
Right.
And what does that speak to? Is it different age ranges, different numbers? But what does the level thing mean?
So I think you use a lot of the jargon. So these are almost equivalent to an SD.
Okay.
So we're going through an SD progression here. We're going from more simple matching to sorting, and then to receptively identifying the object.
Okay.
So we really incorporated skills into creating this game and making sure that we actually had teaching points and objectives.
Great.
And that they progress. So as the child gets better and masters levels, they can move on, earn more points, and then go on to win the whole game.
Great. And as we've talked about before on the show, a great place to start when you're teaching something is with matching. So we would do level 1. And let's go ahead, Ashley, and push the button, and let's see what it goes into so that they can... Okay, and so then we have to push...
picture with the identical picture below.
We don't have the picture below. So it said, I don't know if you could hear the voice, match the picture with the picture below.
Right.
So you're giving me a choice between 2 at this point.
Amazing.
And then as soon as she does that, did you see the reinforcement there? We got the star, and we got the social praise for it, and it gets harder because our field goes from 2 to 3.
Right.
What happens if you get it wrong? Yeah.
That's not it.
Okay.
So you get...
And I love this. Did you guys see what just happened?
Right.
The voice said, that's not it, in a very general, neutral way, but the chair and the microwave got smaller and the window got bigger.
Match these.
Okay, and now it's flashing.
Perfect.
It's that errorless
because
learning.
I didn't answer.
Right. That errorless learning that we were talking about yesterday, that if you can't get the answer right, guess what we're going to do? We're going to give you the answer, and you're going to do it in different progressions. So what happens if you keep getting it wrong, Ashley? Does it eventually move away the field of 2 and go to 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, so that you can't...
There's no possibility that you can get it wrong.
Right, unless you just don't play it.
Right.
So we'll let it go and see if it will go there. But this is the most important thing. When we were planning for these games, here it goes, it's just one-on-one. There we go. Is that we wanted it to teach, and not just by, trial and error, not just you can keep pressing the same button over and over. I don't know if your son's ever played a game and it just makes the same noise over and over, and it drives you nuts.
Absolutely.
We don't want that to be what happens, because it can turn into something that's self-stimulatory, or they start to like those sounds. And we really wanted it to teach and to provide prompts and to have a hierarchy, just like we would do with a kid, with one of our clients or your child in vivo in a therapy session. We wanted that to be simulated here.
And you know what I love about this? What's so clever about this is that we all know that technology is never going to completely supplant one-on-one. But if we can be using this to greatly supplement what's going on, it's money-saving, it's time-saving, and it's also, we know, really reinforcing to the kids to play in this way.
It is, definitely. And one of the things about iPads, because I get asked about iPads all the time by friends and family that know what I do, and what an iPad does that a teacher can't do is that it takes away some of the social component that might be keeping our client or your child from learning, because the classroom itself has so many demands just by what that space is and who's in it. So this kind of takes that away, and you don't need the eye contact, but really good apps that are coming out are requiring some of that social interaction to even play the games. And that's with really good technology and training for teachers and therapists, and actually getting these tablets and things in classrooms and in therapy sessions, we can have a lot of success with these types of games and educational games and learning games.
Yeah. Well, I think it's remarkable, and I think it's a great way to go. Again, not completely removing the one-on-one experience, right? But really supplementing it. Imagine if you had the one-on-one person there and they were doing this kind of program one-on-one with your child, and then they leave, or even if in the middle of the program, you know, we often give a reward of getting to play with technology in between. So if you did the lesson and then handed them this, they're still getting the lesson, but it's reinforcing for them. You're getting twice as much done.
Exactly.
And it's free.
And it's free. And we talked about babysitting. And so this is kind of like a babysitter in a sense. And we all worry about our kids just watching TV and doing nothing when we're not around. But this is something that they can play and you can feel comfortable with because they're actually going to learn.
Absolutely. And even if you have a babysitter who's there and you can say, hey, they can play with the iPad and you can leave, go to the movie and know that they're still growing and learning.
Right.
A spectacular thing. So Camp Discovery, you can go, should we look at let's look at level 4, for example, for just a second.
So this is the receptive SD that I was talking about.
Okay.
So we're getting the child to identify the object.
Yes. So she said find the
milk.
Find the milk.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear it, you can play it again.
The milk.
Okay, that's great.
Excellent.
And I love how we get
I'd been playing it earlier, so it picked up where I left off with the milk.
So you would have started in a place, when we were playing it, my son and I, it did the errorless learning in the beginning and it only gave him the milk. And he was like, oh, this is so easy. Of course, I've only have a choice of one. And then it was very interesting to watch him as it gave him a choice. He goes, oh, now they're trying to confuse me. Oh, and then it would start on the next one. He'd have mastered it, and then it would start on the next one, and it would be doing. It was so fun to hear him at this point in his life going back over a lesson that he did when he was little, and he was like, "This is crazy. It's so easy." And I said, "Yeah, dude, you used to struggle over this at one point, but very fun." And he, even though it was very easy, he liked the way the star lit up, and when we got to talking and something was getting bigger and flashing, he's like, Look what it's doing. So a great program. Camp Discovery, I know you guys are always asking us about apps, and I love to share with you the free apps.
And we have a lot more coming. So this is just one small piece of the pie, but there are some really fun things planned. This is definitely just a little taste.
Great.
And it's really fun. And the administrative features, you can change what objects you want to teach in a library, and you can change how long you want it to go between trials, so between questions.
Right.
And
so
there are
really
all
have
sorts
the ability
of really
to customize.
Features that you can use to customize your experience.
Right.
And timers and all sorts of stuff. So it's really has a lot for parents too, so they can feel like they are able to customize it for their child. It's not one size fits all.
Great thing to do if your child's in the car, if you're having to wait someplace. Educational and reinforcing. Have to love that. Thank you so much for coming in and showing us stuff. And I hope when you have more stuff, you'll come in and show us too.
Yeah, we definitely will.
Okay, Camp Discovery, free on the iTunes store.
For iPad.
For iPad only, but other stuff coming, and we'll let you know when it comes. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with our healthy eating tips. Stick with us.
Nick was nonverbal till he was 2 years old. We had lots of behavioral problems with him, and we had a lot of social problems at school that were somewhat mysterious.
Nick Yates was diagnosed with autism at an early age, but he didn't begin receiving intensive ABA until he was 5 years old.
4, 5. Fantastic! Give me 5, buddy. All right.
Despite great progress, Nick, like so many young individuals on the spectrum, was bullied throughout his school years.
I just want to be able to be a regular kid out there in the world and get along with others.
By the time he was a teenager, Nick's progress was significant enough that he lost his autism diagnosis and was deemed recovered. Today, Nick is a charming, socially savvy college senior who travels and is an emotional speaker on the subject of autism and recovery. I sat down with Nick recently to talk about autism through his eyes and his reaction to the Sandy Hook shootings. So Nick, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
I always enjoy an opportunity to talk to you.
Me too.
So Nick, you're a college student.
Yes.
And you're in your
My final year.
Final year.
Yes.
And thinking about potentially becoming a teacher.
Correct.
And what would you like to teach?
Either social studies or humanities.
So high school or college?
High school or middle school.
Wow.
Yes.
And why that age range?
Well, somebody has to do it.
That's true.
I'm up for things that are challenging.
Okay. I'm wondering, when people ask you to explain autism, what do you say?
It's really not easy to explain simply because it affects everybody differently.
Yeah.
But when you look at the commonalities, what you find are people who have a lot of problems interacting socially and communicatively. So that's only part of it.
Yeah.
But that's really what a lot of those affected by it have in common.
Absolutely. I know you met Jack Riley, the little boy in the A word. And you and I had an opportunity to talk about that. That was a little bit of an emotional thing for you to meet.
It was. And you know, I was talking to his father, and before I was supposed to hang up, he interjects saying that he wants to talk to his brother. By his brother, he meant me. And I cannot tell you what that meant to me.
That's a wonderful thing. So I have to ask you, we had some events in the world at Sandy Hook. The following day, news started to come out where they were attaching autism to the event. What did that feel like for you and for your family? What kinds of things were you guys talking about?
We weren't happy with it,
Yeah.
all right. I'm certainly not happy
Yeah.
with the link. There's no research that shows that those who are affected by autism or related disorder are far likelier to be perpetrators of such violence than victims.
People with autism are no more likely to commit atrocities than anyone else. The sad truth of the matter is that individuals with ASD are far more likely to actually be victims of violence and bullying than they are to commit it themselves.
I think also what needs to happen is that we start to value mental health care professionals a lot more. Because I believe that if we did, then we wouldn't have had as many incidents as what happened the other week. And also in Oregon or Wisconsin or Colorado.
Absolutely.
Because any death is wrong if it's a murder.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, I so appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about this and to give us your viewpoint, because I always appreciate your viewpoint on everything.
Thank you.
And if there's one thing that you wanted people watching to know about autism, what would it be?
I wish that some people would realize that there are those who have far greater disabilities than those affected by a disability such as autism. In particular, this kind of disability is one that is invisible, and it's a lack of empathy or understanding or love. And we need a lot more of that. The best anybody can do is be themselves and treat everybody as they would like to be treated.
Absolutely. Right. Do unto others as you would have done unto you.
And practice what you preach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Welcome back to Autism Live. We like to give a healthy eating tip every week. It's Tuesday, so it's time to do that. And every couple of months, we do a refresher on what is known as the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Now, if you're new to the show and new to this concept, let me give you a little background on this. The Environmental Working Group is a great website. They're a great organization. They are sort of like a consumer watchdog for the kind of environmental exposure that you might have across a lifetime. They are not an organization that deals in autism, although of course, you know, autism is one of the things that we know has at least a component of it that's environmentally driven, so they do talk about autism from time to time. But they're really there to give ratings on things to let you know what kind of an exposure you might be presenting yourself to from an environmental source. So they do talk about groceries and things like that, especially fruits and vegetables, and they started a list called the Dirty Dozen. These are the 12, although now there's 2 extra, but Dirty Dozen is really easy to remember. And you can Google Dirty Dozen and find it on a bunch of different websites, but it's really put out by the Environmental Working Group. You can get to their website, www.ewg.org. And when you're there, tootle around, look at a couple of different things. I will caution you that it feels a little like you're going off a cliff because you start to worry about things like this. And don't let yourself perseverate on it, right? We want to all live a rich and wonderful life as healthy as possible, but when you start getting afraid of everything, that's not healthy either. But for instance, if you want to look up some of the different, they have a new part on their website where you can look up your household cleaners. They've always had a great website where you can look up cosmetics and things that you use to put on your skin to see what is a little bit healthier than other things. And that's really I think, the healthy place that we want to look at this. We say, okay, I'm about to make a choice. What's the healthiest choice that I can make in this moment? And there are lots to be considered in that moment, like money and time and convenience, in addition to health, right? So when you're filtering things through that, you might want to consider the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. When you're standing in the grocery store, there are a total of 14 now fruits and vegetables that they have rated to say there's enough of a pesticide possibility that if you have the funds and and you're trying to pick and choose, what would I buy organic? These are the ones that you would choose first to buy organic. So let's go down this list of the Dirty Dozen +2. And this is right on their website. I'm on their website, www.ewg.org, and it's their food news summary. So here we are. Buy these organic. Apples. Yep, and those are harder to come by, quite honestly. And when you're buying applesauce, really good idea to spend the extra. That is not as hard to find or as expensive. Spend a little extra money and get the organic on those. Celery. Let's go back and I'll just read down the list and then we'll talk about them. Celery, sweet bell peppers, a tough one because they're expensive as it is. Peaches, strawberries, nectarines that are imported, grapes of all kinds, imported and domestic, spinach, lettuce, cucumbers, blueberries, the domestic kind, and potatoes. And then notice the +2 green beans and kale or other greens. And it specifies that these contain, in general, a pesticide that is of specific concern. So they've added those to the list this year. Okay, so if you look at this list and you think, what do these things have in common? All of them, if you're at all in a farming region, know that there are pesticides that will get dumped on these things because there are specific blights or specific worms or something that can really decimate the crop. So it does mean that sometimes getting them without the pesticide is significantly more expensive. But again, if you're starting to think in terms of this, they're telling you here's where the money is well spent. Also notice that these things are very thin-skinned. That's another thing that they all have in common, that their protection from the pesticide when it's being sprayed is going to be thin. For it to be able to, and so you might think to yourself, well, I'll peel the apple, but because it's thin-skinned, it's having the opportunity to soak more into the entire item. So these are the things that you really want to consider buying organic as much as possible. Now, on the other side of the equation are the Clean 15. And these are items that you'll notice have a thicker skin or have layers, and they test out in laboratories to show less impact, less likelihood that once it gets to your table that you're actually getting a significant or any amount of pesticide. So let's go down the list. Onions, sweet corn, pineapples, avocado, cabbage, sweet peas, asparagus, mangoes, eggplant, kiwi, cantaloupe that's grown domestically, sweet potatoes, grapefruit, watermelon, and mushrooms. Now, you know what's significant about this to me is that it used to be that grapefruit, particularly red grapefruit, was on the Dirty Dozen. But it has been upgraded to be now not just in the middle, because obviously there are lots of things that are not listed on either of these lists, but now it's on the Clean 15. So I would assume, and it's never good to assume, that something has changed in that industry. I would love to know. And we had an opportunity not too long ago to talk to Ken Cook, who is the director and president of the Environmental Working Group, and we need to have him on the show. But we did get a chance to interview him recently. But this is really meant to be a guideline for you. You're going to filter it through what your life is and what your financial situation is, what your convenience and location to these items are. And I would encourage you to check out at your local farmers market and ask the farmers. And of course, you're taking somebody's word, but I think that farmers as a whole are trustworthy people, and especially if you got your kid there with you. And I always say to my child when I'm first talking to a farmer, look pathetic for me. You know, and I will say to them, I will say, do you spray? Do you use pesticides? Because my child is particularly sensitive. And they will tell you. They will tell you. Sometimes they will say, you know, we only spray at this time of year, and then you decide whether that's information that changes it for you or not. Or they might say, well, here are the pesticides that we do use. They're very forthcoming, I have found, and I've been to many farmers markets. What you will find is that a lot of farmers have not been able to, it's a really lengthy process and a very expensive process to be certified organic. But there are a lot of farmers who are doing sustainable farming and they're not using the pesticides, or they might use it on one crop and they'll even tell you the location. I've had farmers that I've said, I'm about to buy something and I say, you know, do you spray your plum trees? Because I'm about to buy plums, and they'll say, we do not spray our plum trees, but I have to be honest with you, we spray our apricot trees, which are across the street, and I want you to know that. So that's kind of information that you can get from them. Also want to point out that on that Clean 15, you notice the things that tend to be peeled, right? There's a peel on an onion. There's a peel off of the sweet corn. You peel a pineapple. You peel an avocado, and it has a thicker skin. The cabbage has layers, and usually we shed the outer layers that we do them. But notice the sweet peas, because sweet peas, and by that they're saying that you're taking them out of the shell. And notice that sugar snap peas and the pea pods are not on either list. So they're sort of in no man's land. Asparagus is the really interesting one on the Clean 15 list to me, because I don't think it has as much of a thick skin, but I don't think it is as prone to different pests. Mangoes have a thick skin. Eggplant has a pretty thick skin, as does kiwi, cantaloupe, the sweet potatoes, and the grapefruit. The mushrooms is another interesting one to me on this list. So those are the ones that if financial constraints don't allow, and for a lot of us that's the case, right? You go to the store, and my thing always used to be, well, if it's 10 cents more, 20 cents more, I'm going to get the organic. If it's more than that, Now I go more by these lists. I try to get it organic as much as possible, and I see a difference in my behavior, quite honestly. And I think there is a difference in my son's overall ability to attend. And there are some scientific studies that bear that out, that what they have seen, and they want to study it further, is that when pesticides are in a child's system, they are more likely, they are more prone to have an inability to attend. So, and be more active, more ADHD symptoms. Something to be considered. There you are, the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, a guideline for you. Check them out on the Environmental Working Group's website, ewg.org. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to be talking about your responses to the question of the day. Stick with us. We refer people to your website frequently on our show because you have a wealth of information, although I found out more about it in the talk that you just gave, titled 10 Americans. I hope that everybody has an opportunity at some point to see your talk, but if there was one thing that you wanted parents to, I know, consolidating on one thing that you wanted parents to know, what would it be?
No one now who's working in this field and who's serious about it doesn't realize that it's some combination of a genetic susceptibility or vulnerability or profile, simple how we're made up, as I said tonight, what you bring to the party genetically, with some insult that's caused by environmental exposure. It's not nature versus nurture. It's how they come together.
So often when I hear things about environmental, I feel like, oh, how are we ever going to fix this? There's nothing we can do. But you gave great examples of when in the past we've been able to attack environmental things and turn it around.
Well, you're exactly right. We're into empowerment, not paralysis. And this information can be very paralyzing, overwhelming. There are two ways that we want them to engage on this. At the personal level, go to our website, find the fruits and vegetables that are low in pesticides, the Shopper's Guide to Pesticides in Produce. There's our Dirty Dozen we publish, and a lot of people in the produce industry don't like that, but we really feel that people want a simple guide that can tell them, look, the government's constantly changing its mind about these chemicals. One day they say it's perfectly safe. The next day I read in the newspaper, we're getting rid of it because it's not safe for kids. Well, how do you deal with that? One way to deal with it is don't eat it to begin with, and there's plenty of ways you can do it. I mean, organic food, we buy as much as we can for our household and feed our little guy who's 4. But as a friend of mine once pointed out, organic is private school for food. It's great if you can find it, great if you can afford it, but not everyone always can. So, Shopper's Guide to Pesticides and Produce, our Skin Deep Guide to Personal Care Products, over 70,000 personal care products. Some of them have neurotoxic agents, carcinogenic agents, and other hazards in them. It's not a very well-regulated industry at all. Go to our site, and we go through all 70,000 that we've got on there, and we rate them based on what we think is their health hazard. Similar kind of rating system now for home cleaning products, over 2,200 of them. By doing that, I think and working with consumers, we're really seeing some market change. We have grown from 6,000 people on our email list to 1.3 million now since 2006. People are hungry for this information. You don't have to be scaling a wilderness mountain to be an environmentalist. There's a wilderness in the drugstore, and we are your guides. So we'll get you through it.
Welcome back. I am going to talk about our responses to the question of the day, but you know what I'm doing? Can I be honest? I'm playing on Pinterest. I want to recommend to everybody that you take a look at Pinterest, because I am finding all these great autism resources and things to do and things to play with, and it's a little addictive. And can I tell you what I really love about, now all of a sudden this has turned into Shannon waxing poetic about Pinterest, but you know how I talked about meeting with Temple Grandin the other day, and Temple had said how important it was to her that she had the time to do things that had nothing to do with autism. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm working on that too. And not doing so good about it. But you know what I love about Pinterest is it's sort of a metaphor for our lives, because you have the ability to make all these individual boards that really put different categories of your life. And so I have a board that's just autism things, right? And I have a board of things, I have several boards that have nothing to do with autism. And I also have a board that's just for my child that I've now noticed is not the same things that I want to post for autism, which is a very exciting thing for me. And I can categorize things in different areas. It's a very fun thing, and I would encourage all of you to check it out, not only for the resources for autism, but you can take a 5-minute vacation from autism. And, I love to garden, and I love, more than I love to garden, I love to talk about and think about gardening. There, I'm being honest, because I don't garden nearly as much as I post. But for me to take a 5-minute vacation and to look at gardening things, it's a very, very happy 5-minute vacation, and then I can go back to autism. So check out Pinterest. I don't know why I can't get it to shrink up. Oh, there we go. Okay, but I do want to go and look at your responses to the question of the day. And the question of the day was, how does your child show compassion? And I mentioned that for some of you, you were going to have a little bit of allergic reaction to this, because it may feel like your child isn't showing compassion, and that is a really emotional thing. That's an emotional place to come from. But I encourage that those of you who do see your child showing compassion to please write in, and you guys did. I don't know why my computer just had like a small seizure and it's not letting me see. Let's go back. And then we can talk more about Pinterest. But in any case, compassion is, now it totally left it. All right, my computer is having a small seizure. Nothing to be concerned about. Let's see, let's try it one more time, and if we can't get it, we'll go to A word, and then we'll come back to this. It's just thinking about it, and it decided to do something that I swear I didn't tell it to do. Oh, yeah, it's having its own little meltdown today, because it happens. It happens sometimes for us. It happens sometimes for our children. All right, we're gonna, yes, there's the gremlin. The gremlin, it's eating my Facebook on my computer today. All right, no mind. This is just like what we do as autism parents, right? We have a plan, and when the plan isn't working out, we'll stop and do something else and come back to the plan. We're not giving up. We don't give up, but we'll come back to the plan. In the meantime, let's visit the A word. This is the wonderful documentary that's being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, in his journey through early intensive behavioral intervention. And at this point in the series, Jack Riley is about 2.5. He's been doing ABA therapy in his home for about 6 months. Language is exploding. He's getting a different understanding of the world, and it's time to put a little heavier demands on him. So they're trying to teach him how to transition. Difficult time, but something that we could all use a brush-up course on. So let's take a look at Jack Riley and how they work on transitioning. This is the A word.
To watch the duck song. He'll want to do it for an hour. Okay. One time duck song, okay?
Mike warns Jack Riley that he will be allowed to watch the duck song one time only. He does this so Jack Riley can anticipate what will happen once the song finishes. Transitions are difficult for him and others with autism because they have a hard time anticipating what comes next. Because of this, they have a hard time planning ahead and being flexible. These skills are considered executive functions.
You guys have to watch this duck song. Oh my gosh! I gotta turn the music. I gotta turn the sound up.
And he said to the man, run in the stand, hey, bump, bump, bump. Got any grapes? The man said, look, this is getting old. I mean, lemonade's all we've ever sold. Why not give it a go? The duck said, how about no?
How about no?
Then he waddled away, waddle, waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle, waddle, waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle, waddle. Till the very next day.
So what go? Okay, go. Why not give it a go? Yay!
All done.
Say bye-bye, duck.
Bye-bye, duck.
Bye-bye, duck.
Bye-bye. No. Oh, no.
Bye-bye, duck. Later.
You know, anger's a cool thing at different times, but not right now.
Hey, we'll watch it again later. Say bye-bye, duck.
Bye-bye, duck.
Say, I'll miss you. I'm sad.
I'm sad.
I'm sad.
It's okay. Learning how to transition is a life skill. Every day, one is constantly transitioning from one activity to the next, and he needs to cope with changes without tantrums and not be fixated on doing the same activity repetitively. Watching the duck song is incredibly reinforcing for him, and he needs something just as interesting to transition to.
Hey, Jack, here's Dad waddling. Waddle, waddle. Waddle away, waddle, waddle. Waddle away, waddle, waddle.
There you go.
Oh, the big old shark's gonna get you.
I'm gonna swim and get you. I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, he's been really good about saying what he wants lately. We've really been pushing language a lot.
More shark. More shark.
More shark. Okay, ready? More shark. What should we play? Tozzle? Well, tozzle's for brushing your teeth. Do you want to brush your teeth? Tozzle's this game on his iPod that he only gets when he brushes his teeth. Say, Mommy, I want tozzle.
You want tozzle?
I don't know if that means he wants to brush his teeth.
It means he wants tozzle, but sometimes we brush his teeth to get him to get it. Show me E. Show me ah. Good job. He doesn't like it when I look because he knows I'm going to take it away. I'll count you down before I take it away, okay?
Cheryl's tactic to help Jack Riley transition to the next activity is to count him down. He understands that once she reaches 1, that the preferred item will be taken away.
No lollygagging. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ready? Okay, toothbrushing. We're gonna go like this. Hey, that's not how we do it. Watch mommy. Can you do that? Do that. 1, 2, 3. Yay! Good job.
Yay, Jack Riley, you
Good
job. That was pretty good.
5, 4, 3. Sit down.
Hi, buddy.
Sit down.
Brushing.
3, 2, 1. Yes, I know you know. Okay, we're gonna go bottoms. Like that, okay? Ready? You can do it. 1, 2, 3. Yay!
You did it, Jack.
Good
Good
job.
Good job, Jack.
Jack Riley, we're gonna say bye-bye to Tazzle. Are you ready? Can you give me Tazzle? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, give it to mommy, please. Good boy. I know it's hard, isn't it? Can you march back to mommy? March, 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 march! Yay! A taste of honey. Taste of honey. And you hug your mommy. That's kind of nice. You want your ears kissed or your nose? Ears. You want your ears kissed or your eyes? Eyes. You want your ears kissed or your chin? Chin. Where's your chin? Ears.
Welcome back. I love this series. I just think that it's a really great archive for people to go and look and see inspiration about how this works, what happens, and what is it like really. It's very honest, and I think it gives great examples. One of the things I wanted to mention today, by the way, you can watch the entire series on their YouTube page, and I encourage you to. We've gone back to the beginning and are watching through the entire series again, but you can watch him go through all the toilet training is there that we have not shown here on the show. You can see him have his 4th birthday. I encourage you to take full advantage of this series and share it with people. If there's somebody who you know has a young child and they're seeing things and they're just not feeling like it's really something that they need to address, I would encourage you to say to them, hey, you know what I want you to do? I want you to watch the first episode and the most recent episode and see how much this child has changed. And then when you watch through, it's so gradual that sometimes you miss things, right? Because you go, oh, okay, just small, small, small. But if you watch the first episode and the most recent episode, you're going to see a different child. And it'll give you hope. It'll give you a whole lot of hope. So definitely check it out. And the thing that I want to mention today in talking about this series is that when the mom is doing the toothbrushing with him, and I love how she gets on his level and how she's putting a time constraint on it about how long he has to do it, and she's modeling the behavior for him. I think a lot of times we forget how essential and important that is, and she's giving the reinforcement for it when he does it right. So she's got the phone behind the back and then brings it out when he does it. Yay! And doing it in small increments. We're not having the expectation that this 2.5-year-old is going to be able to brush their teeth for a solid 3 minutes, which is what we eventually want to work up to, 2 to 3 minutes brushing teeth. I don't think most kids do that, and certainly a 2.5-year-old is not going to do it. We're going to have to inch up to it. But a great series, The A Word, so we encourage you to check that out. All right, before we left, I had gremlins who ate my Facebook page on my computer, and I got it back. We were able to access that finally. I think it was me, not the computer, but in any case, our question of the day was, how does your child show compassion? And I mentioned that for some people, that's going to be a toughie, because if your child isn't, feels like, why are you asking me this question? Because there are people whose children are showing compassion, and I want you to see that it is possible. So somebody wrote in and said that their child shows compassion with smiles. I love that. Another person who says, absolutely, my daughter may not talk, but when she tore up her younger brother's school folder, he came in my room crying. She followed him with a sad look on her face. LOL, I thought that was cute. Love when that stuff happens. Weird, I know, but it just gives me some hope she'll start talking because she's 12 and nonverbal. I don't think that that's weird at all. You know, sometimes the most bizarre stuff happens and our children do things that other parents would go, why are you happy about that? And in fact, it's amazing. Somebody not too long ago posted something on Facebook and they said, my child just lied. And they had exclamation point, exclamation, and they were like, woohoo. And all the autism parents wrote in and said, congratulations, we're so excited for you. And there were other parents who said, did I miss something? Yes, bless your heart, you did. You missed something and we're glad you did. But yes, you missed something because we celebrate that. I was telling my husband the other day, and I've shared before on the show, that I am a terrible potty mouth person. I am. I admit it that I like to swear, and I try to be very careful to never swear in places that it's not appropriate, but I will be absolutely honest, because my child didn't begin to speak and mimic that, it went on way too long. And because of my frustration with autism and some of the things that were going on, it went on way too long. And then my child began to swear. And, you know, like his mother, he finds it very reinforcing. And the other day he said something wildly inappropriate. But two things happened. Before he said it, he said, Mom, can I have permission to say something that's inappropriate? And I said, yes, I know. I need to be blacklisted as a parent. But, you know, I wanted to know what he had to say. I waited years to hear what he had to say, and I have a hard time filtering it now. And he said something, and when he said it, he made a gesture when he said it that was so in keeping with what he was saying. He was, you know, and really that's one of the last bastions for my child, is that he doesn't gesture when he speaks. And he said, you know, and he said it, and I hugged him. And I told my husband afterwards, I need to be taken out to the woodshed and beaten because I need to, you know, he said, no, I get it. I get it why you would hug him for that. And then we had a conversation about, we really can't be saying that, he or I. And we have a swear jar. But still, we celebrate sometimes. And yes, you know, your child ripped up her brother's folder, but she felt bad about it because he felt bad. That's something to celebrate. You can worry about the ripping up the folder another time. This stuff is bigger, right? It's exciting. Okay, somebody else who said that they show compassion with music. I kind of want to know more. I do. I want to know how they do that. Another person says with many kisses. Oh, I love that. Someone else says hugs, kisses, and when he knows someone is sad, he caresses their hair. So sweet. That is so sweet. I love that. Someone else who says, mine is very affectionate. Lots of hugs and kisses are given in their household. I am more than just a little lucky to have a son so loving that he will show his affections. Nothing touches me more than my hero saying, Daddy, I very, very love you. Okay, I'm welling up. Or out of the blue hug. Autism is difficult, but I wouldn't have him any other way. We love it when we hear from our dads. I'm going to like that too. Other people have already liked that, and I'm going to like that too, but not now because it will mess up my Facebook. Okay, somebody else, can't find my cursor, says, LOL, my 6-year-old can show compassion, but the funniest thing is when his 10-year-old sister is whining and crying over something that's no biggie, he imitates her and then giggles. Ooh, she gets really mad, but it slays me with a happy face here. Yeah. I would be cautious about that, though, because bigger kids won't like that. Another person who said he's always trying to help others when he thinks they're sad or in trouble. Love that. And somebody else says lots of hugs, kiss, and sometimes cry. Another person who says that their child, when first diagnosed, would try not to show any emotions, but we have done so much with him since he was 2, so much therapy and so much on our part, that I'm happy to say he's 5 now. And even though he might be able to make it he might be able to make it through kindergarten. He laughs, cries, and kisses and hugs almost everyone now. And he will for sure show you anger. It might be getting a little out of hand, but not sure what to do about calming it or down or making sure it doesn't get out of control. Does anyone have any ideas about that? Of course we have ideas about that. And you know what? I'm going to wait and have Dr. Doreen Granpeche talk about that tomorrow because we have her on in the morning. And we'll put that on. I'm going to make a note to myself that we talk about controlling anger right off the gate with Dr. Granpeche. There we go. I have my note because she'll have some great tips about that. Okay, another person who says you've probably tried this. They're giving advice. I love it when you guys give each other advice. Catch the fit before it happens. We talk about that a lot. Antecedent modification. Their child was always upset. You keep doing that, he should catch on. I also have her sit in the tub with something that glows or lights up. You have to be very careful that it's something that's safe to be in the tub, of course. The person says, I don't have a sensory station. Maybe it's time for a med change or to check for stomach irritation, and good luck. And again, we'll talk about this more with Dr. Granpeche tomorrow. Another person who says that their child shows compassion with hugs and kisses, and when we say, I love you, my awesome son says it back. That's a great day. And she says, we are so very lucky. Yes, those of us who can hear our children say, I love you back, we're very lucky. We're very lucky. Another person who says, my son cries when I'm upset. He gets worried when I'm crying too much and will hold my arm tightly. You know, and I know there are people who will say, oh, we shouldn't let our children see us have emotions. And I don't agree with that. I have to be honest. I think it's best if we model behavior that we want our children to participate in. And we would never want our children to never cry, right? There are some times when it's necessary to cry, to move on or to express grief. And I can remember years ago when my father died. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary, and I had nieces and nephews who were about the same age that my child is now. And there were some in the family who said, well, we need to keep them separate from this and the grief that we're having. And other people in the family said, why? They're not separate from this. They're feeling grief too, and they don't know how to language it. They don't know how to process it. And these were neurotypical kids. And the agreement was made amongst all of us that not that we would wallow in the emotion, but that we would feel comfortable to cry and say, I'm feeling very sad, so that it gave them permission to also feel sad too. And of course, I've shared on the show that my mom just died, and it was very interesting preparing my son for that. And I had time. We didn't have time when my father died to prepare the kids for it, but I had some time to explain to him, you know, Grandma is going to die, and to share with him that it was a very sad thing, and to hold him while he had emotion, and for him to see my husband and I both having emotion about it, and that we keep talking about it and taking his lead with it as well. But it is important to allow our children to see us feeling sad and for us to language it and say, Mommy is feeling sad, and Mommy is feeling sad about this, so that they don't feel like they've done something wrong, but that they understand that everybody has emotions. Very, very important that we model that behavior. Okay, we have to take a little bit of a break, but I encourage you guys to keep writing in. I think it is inspiration to all of us. And again, we're going to talk about that, teaching a child emotional self-control and dealing with their anger with Dr. Doreen Granpeche tomorrow. That's 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Pacific Time. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what an amazing weekend it has been in the last couple of days, talking about sports and autism. We're going to do a quick segment with that, and then we'll be back with Evelyn Gould, so stick with us.
My name is Vince Redman, and I'm one of the regional directors for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. keeping things positive, I think, is essential across the board. And one of the things is, again, not focusing on the negatives. I think the focus of all discussions need to be on possibly what needs to be done or what needs to change, but it's not a negative thing. It's not that they can't do this or they shouldn't do this or they won't be able to do this. It needs to be, well, he can do this, so let's make it better so he can do this. Or he can do this, but he wants, we need to get him to do this so then he can have more friends or he can talk more. And I really think just the tone, the presentation, the accessibility to making sure that everyone's involved is really, really essential as a fundamental step to keeping this all positive, so that when their child does have some of the aberrant behaviors or some of the aggressive behaviors that sometimes are a part of the autism diagnosis, they'll know what to do. They'll have coping strategies. They'll know what their responsibilities are. They'll know how to make it better. And they'll also know that this is just part of it and there's nothing wrong. This is what we need to do. And when it's done, then you can go back and play with your brother and sister, or go back to doing whatever. So again, making them a part of it, keeping it very positive in the way we present it. Even some basic early education. There's many, many really good children's books about having siblings that are different, either it be with autism or it be in a wheelchair or it be even step brothers and sisters that might be of a different ethnicity or a different race, that really integrate to embrace the differences between each and to be proud of it. And it's family regardless of any differences between them. So I think some of those early reads would be important as well.
Welcome back. We shared with you yesterday about Dan Marino, he and his lovely wife, and that this Sunday they had an event for autism, and how inspirational and just how much we want to salute them for that. And also wanted to mention that last night the Doug Flutie Foundation had their Doug Flutie Bowl, where they were bowling to raise money for autism, and we want to salute the Fluties and their organization for the amazing things that they have done for autism. And also, something that we have scheduled to talk about tomorrow when Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is here, that Eddie Guidardo, another baseball player, also had his event that he holds every year on Sunday, Stars and Strikes, which is a bowling event that raises money for autism, raises money for autism care and treatment today. So we wanted to salute the Doug Flutie Foundation, and tomorrow we're going to be talking more about the Guidardos, but I just wanted to take a moment. It's so easy on this journey to think that we're alone and that not enough people are doing things, but obviously our sports stars are, and they did enforce this week, and it's not just this week, but a big shout out to the Fluties for what they have been doing for years. An amazing amount of money raised for autism families, and they do give grants. And I also want to remind you to check out their website for the Flutie Foundation for Autism, because a remarkable, remarkable organization and a remarkable family who's getting it done, stepping up and getting it done. And also to remind you that tomorrow we'll be talking about the Guidardos. It's just a sports love fest. All right, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we will be joined by BCBA Evelyn Gould. It's our segment called Making Room with Evelyn, so stick with us. Welcome. I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today we're talking about how to keep kids healthy.
I think it's really important for, of course, every child to have a pediatrician that the parent is comfortable with and that the parent is seeing regularly, someone who's an expert on autism, who understands the issues related to autism.
A lot of kids who are on the spectrum are a little bit obsessed with one area of food. Any suggestions?
I think it's really difficult for parents because many of their children either self-limit or they don't like certain textures. Their pediatricians, after testing them, see that they are deficient in iron and other nutrients that are so important. And so it does reach the levels where many parents need to seek help, maybe from something like SOS, Specialized Outpatient Services, or another feeding clinic in their area. Someone who can address specifically, how do I get my child to eat this texture? How do I get my child to eat something other than French fries?
So what advice do you have for parents in terms of realizing what's the autism and what's something else that has to be addressed?
As we all know, every child is different, and from one child to the next on the spectrum, their symptoms are different, and what they struggle with medically is different. You do run into a problem with many physicians saying, well, that's just symptomatic of autism, and so we're not going to treat it. And I think it's really important to be sure that if they need to see a neurologist to address seizures, that they're getting that done. If they need to see a nutritionist because of the food issues, that they're getting that done, all while being treated by a pediatrician who maybe can help oversee that. But I think it's not a great idea to dismiss everything as that's just autism.
I always try to imagine a child trying to do therapy while they've got all these biological things going on, and how could they possibly concentrate?
Right. Well, our clients are just like you and I. It's very difficult to concentrate if I have a headache or if I have an upset stomach. And so I think it's really important to first give the child the opportunity to feel better, whatever that means for that child, because again, each child is very different. But I have had children that once you address a specific food allergy, then the symptoms of stomach pain or, a sty in their eye that wouldn't go away or constant diarrhea, until we addressed that medical issue, it's very difficult to concentrate on treatment.
Sure.
And then once they could address those issues, then treatment, went more the way we were hoping it would go.
Absolutely. And there's all kinds of things that would come under that heading, right? If they had sleep disorders, if we already said food allergies, but what about vision problems?
Absolutely. The hard thing is, depending on the child's ability to communicate, sometimes it's difficult to have vision tested or to have hearing tested. So working in combination with someone who could help expose the child to the contingencies that would be in place, for example, for a vision test, and practicing or being prepared may help in those situations, but it's definitely a real issue.
Wow. So maybe even using your ABA program to practice for the vision test.
Right. It's very difficult for parents to find a pediatrician often that they connect with, but I think I encourage them to keep looking for a pediatrician who has specific experience and has other clients maybe with autism, and they have a good rapport with other parents. Someone who can listen to their concerns about sleep or about seizures or about eating and not dismiss them. Because, sometimes we uncover things that are surprising or that were unexpected, just like with the rest of us. So it's important to keep looking for answers, I think, to all of those issues.
And the healthier they are, the happier they're going to be, and the quicker they're going to learn.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with the fabulous Evelyn Gould. She is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst with a great deal of experience working with our children on the autism spectrum. It's always a thrill to have you here. I kind of wish people could hear the conversations that we have during the breaks. Because we were just having a great deal of fun. Somebody wrote and said, Shannon, you're so funny, you make my day so much better. And I said, what did I say that was funny? And we were talking about that because recently my son informed me that I don't know how to be funny, that I'm not a funny person, that Dad is hilarious, but that when I make attempts to be funny, that I don't know how to do it. And it's just a horrible, sad thing that Mom does not know how to be funny. And I really got offended and took issue with it and said, I'll have you know that some people think I'm funny. And that I used to be a stand-up comedian. He did not believe me. Whatever. We were laughing about how kids don't always see people as real people. And I was just telling her the story. Now that I'm into it, I might as well tell it. Of a teacher who once told me, after teaching at a neurotypical high school for years and years and years, during a summer break, he was in the hardware store, and one of his students walked up to him, and he was wearing shorts. And the student looked at him and said, Mr. Williams, you have legs. It's a completely neurotypical high school student who just had not pictured him as a person with legs underneath his pants. She'd only ever seen him in long pants. It just goes to show that even neurotypical kids sometimes don't see the big picture. Even we don't see the big picture sometimes. Nope. Just like when I met Temple Grandin the other day, and I asked her if she was still teaching, and she said, yes, this is important to me as a woman. And I had that moment of, oh my gosh, Temple Grandin is a whole real person walking this earth who has feelings about her worth as a woman. I can relate to this. It was just amazing to me. Very exciting. But thrilled to have you here. I digress.
think we all have this revelations of their parents where we suddenly realize that they're actually people and they had lives before us and they maybe did other things that we didn't know about.
Yes.
It's like a moment we all kind of go through.
And can I tell you that as a person who didn't have my child until older, I had friends and my sister had kids, and my favorite thing in the world was to sit and talk with their kids when they were a certain age and tell them stories about things I would do with their parent that they would go, what? Yeah. What? I can't, what? You did what?
I grew up in Belfast, and my dad always had a taxi account for his work, and every time I used to get a taxi, he would always, home at night or something, he would always tell me to get it on the account, and I would get into the taxi and they would just tell me all these stories about my dad and where my dad had been and whether he'd had a good time and who he'd been in the taxi with, and sometimes they would tell me things about my mum, but less so than my dad, and I would just be like, what? My dad was wearing what? Going to where?
And it's fascinating.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, very fascinating. I'm sure that your dad wasn't thrilled that they were telling you all this stuff about him, or was he okay with it?
He's funny. He kind of just takes everything as it comes and thinks everything's funny, and he's just like, well, I just have a life.
Yes, I'm a real person. I have a life, and my son who doesn't think I'm funny. I'll let him know that you thought that I was funny. In any case, we were talking on Friday because we had you on Friday, and a parent had written in and was talking because we've been talking about bullying, and they were writing about a specific circumstance with during recess and lunchtime, some of the other kids at school encouraging the child to say things that were inappropriate and finding it funny, and that it really isn't okay. And our immediate response was, well, if you're aware of it and it's during lunchtime, then it may be that the school is aware of it, that was sort of, a lot of times we have to kind of piece things together, and so that was sort of what we went with.
Right, we thought that maybe the parent knew about it because she'd been told by the school.
And then the parent wrote back and said, but we were already moving on, so we said we would talk about it this week. The parent wrote back and said that they observed it at a park from a distance, and which changes things up a little bit. And I think that really leads us to the part of the, and then she further wrote that the peers are saying to the child, say this, and then they laugh, and it makes the child happy because we all like to think that we're funny and that we're appreciated for the full human beings that we are. Why would that be any different for our kids? So it makes him happy to make other happy. He's 10 years old and mainstreamed. So these are neurotypical peers. He's 10. It's, my son is 9.5 now. They're vicious little buggers at this age. And I love them. I love all the kids that go to my child's school, but they're vicious little buggers.
I have 3 brothers, and I remember how terrible they were at that age.
They really are. We had parents writing in yesterday talking about kids putting hand sanitizer in their other kids' hair and thinking it was hilarious. It just, it's an emotional thing. But so if we take this back to realizing that maybe the school is not aware of it, it seems like to me that might be the first priority, is to get them on board and have them understand that this is happening.
And it's possible as well that even if they observe it from a distance, a teacher, and they don't hear what's happening, they just see the kids laughing together, they might not realize what's going on.
They go, oh, they're interacting. They've got friends. They're being social. But if you don't know the finesse of it, then you can miss that.
And also, I think sometimes people forget that even if the child is laughing, they're obviously maybe not aware that the kids are being mean, and therefore they're kind of like, well, he doesn't know they're being mean, so
it's okay. He doesn't realize that they're picking on him.
Right, but it's not okay at all.
It isn't. It is not okay. So making the school aware of it, and we've talked about this a little bit over the last couple of days about languaging things in such a way that they realize that it's a serious situation. You need to decide for yourself how much language you want to go into, but do know, as you mentioned the other day, that there are legal, the law is on your side. It's called handicap harassment or disability harassment. It's very serious. It's not allowed. And by the way, if you look at the fine points of the law, it doesn't say anything about that the person who is doing the harassment must be aware of the fact that they're using the disability to harass. It's just on the side of the person. So if, for instance, somebody is blind, unable to see, and somebody is picking on them and saying, you know, can't you see that? Can't you see that? And they really don't know that they're blind, it doesn't change the fact that it is handicap harassment. So if the person who has the handicap feels that it's part and parcel of what their difficulty is, that they're receiving the harassment, that is what makes it handicap harassment.
Right, so you do want to approach it, I think we talked about before, not just in terms of your child, but also with the bully. So we really want to make sure that the school's aware so that you can put in place some strategies that protect your child and educate the bullies, and maybe involve some peer support or whatever the strategies that are possible. And your school should have an anti-bullying policy as well. And then you want to have stuff written into your child's IEP that are goals that are going to help your child develop skills that will help them deal with the situation better, or to not kind of aggravate the situation, or to understand the situation a little better.
And there could be a whole host of skills that would go hand in hand with this particular thing, depending on what your child already knows and can do. But part of this, correct me if I'm wrong, is being able to discern other people's intentions. So in all circumstances, not just this circumstance, right? Because, you know, it's the circumstance of somebody who's a stranger who's offering you candy. Well, what are their intentions? And for these children, say this, what are their intentions? But a whole host of other things that we may not be able to think of. Now, it might be that you probe and see that your child does have some understanding of intentions, but maybe you just need to shore it up, or maybe they have no understanding of intentions.
I mean, we don't know anything about this child and where they're coming from, because maybe the child does understand the intention, but they just really want to make friends and be liked. So that would be, you'd kind of approach that a little differently. You'd want to then work on helping the child develop appropriate friendships, or to get approval from peers in different ways, or to understand that those kids are being mean and that they're not their friends, or whatever. You need to figure out where the skill deficits are and what the function of the behaviors on both sides, like why your child is responding the way they are, and why those bullies are doing what they're doing.
And it's easy to look at it and go, well, you know, it appears that the child is happy to make the other children happy, and it appears that the other children are getting reinforced by it by having the child say something that's inappropriate, but there might be more to it. So can they ask the school to do an FBA on the entire situation?
They can do that.
Okay. And then, but I love this idea of then, once the FBA is put into place, having IEP goals written into your child's program, your child's IEP, to help them to be able to head this off at the pass.
And like one of the things that's very clear from the little research that has been done is that building friendship skills is really key to preventing bullying. So you're definitely going to want some IEP goals in there that are going to help support your child develop appropriate friendships, because peer support really helps decrease bullying. Like having a peer who's maybe there, who can say that's, oh, don't do that, or you know, whatever, support that child. And having then stuff like having the child understand that what they're being asked to repeat is not appropriate. And then again, intentions and that kind of social understanding or theory of mind that we talked about.
Because imagine for a second, if we take this and put it into practice, that this child has a friend who sticks up for them. And those other kids come up and say, hey, you know, say this. And there's the friend who's a little bit more on top of this particular skill who says, don't. They're being mean.
Right.
And then that stops your child, which cuts off potential reinforcement to the children. So eventually they go, oh, well, we'll not do it
obviously,
anymore.
along with that, then you need a classroom, school-based intervention to support peers, to educate peers, and to help peers feel good about standing up for others and not feeling like they're going to get bullied or that they're going to get the attention turned on them in some way. So you really have to do it from both. For the helping the child develop skills, but also making sure the classroom support's there and the anti-bullying policies are there, and that somebody is in the classroom educating the peers and so on.
Yeah, and it should all be there. I do think that a lot of times it just takes bringing the entire incident and the fact that you're not going to let it go to the attention of the administration so that they have to get in there. And the thing that I always like to remind all of us is, while that's a huge pain in the rumpus to do, and it's really putting yourself out there, and there's a lot of anxiety that will come with rocking the boat. If you do it and let them know, I'm sticking in on this. This is important to me. What will happen is that your child will get help, and the other children will get help. Everybody will have learned from it, or you will see clearly that the school is not capable of dealing with this, which will be a signal to you that it's time to do something different.
I think, you know, you don't need to have evidence either that it is happening. You can just go to the school and be concerned and want to put preventative measures in to make sure it's not happening. And that includes putting in stuff into the IEP and making sure there's an anti-bullying policy in place. And I agree with you. I think that if the school reacts in a non-supportive way, that is not okay, because really you're a parent and you're concerned about your child's welfare, and bullying is a real issue, and we know that across the board from the research, everything out there, that bullying is a problem, and it is a big problem for our kids on the spectrum in particular. So they really shouldn't be reacting in any kind of unsupportive way towards you.
And I have found with my child and with school situations that, you know how when children, we've talked about this before on the show, when they hear and they see in our body when we give a qualified no or an absolute no, we don't have to yell. But I know that if my child goes to put his hand on the stove, I'm going to say no, and it is a firm no, and my body says it's a no, he knows it's a no, and he gets it. If he asks me, you know, can I watch 5 more minutes of television tonight, and I go no, and my body suggests that there is room to negotiate, he will get in there and negotiate. And I find the same thing is true at school, that if I say we're not doing this, and I don't have to be mean about it, but I just go, that's not a possibility, or the phrase that my niece teaches me all the time, I'm sorry, but that won't be possible, and I can say it in the nicest possible way, they see that I am immovable on that, and we're done, and they get busy. So I encourage all of us, the same way that we do with our children, to be firm. We don't have to be mean or aggressive, but they can tell, we can tell when somebody is not going to do something. And I try to portray that, you know, with this part of my body, that, you know, we're firm on this. There's lots of room for negotiation, but I'm not going to have my child be bullied, and I am going to follow it up. They get it.
Right, and if you also have people working with your child at home, like if you're lucky enough to have a BCBA or somebody who's supporting you and building skills at home, then remember to inform them about it too.
Yes.
So this isn't just a school problem.
Right.
You want to have that person help work with your child, whether it's modeling or role play or whatever the strategies are that are suitable for your child. You want to have them build in goals so they can practice the skills.
Yes.
And target them there as well.
Fabulous. So lots of things, and hopefully we've answered that question a little bit more, but if there's even the potential that the school is not aware or that they haven't taken up the cause, there's a little bit more work to do there. And want to remind you that all of the legal people that we've had in on the show have said that sending an email counts as written notice. So I think it's important to put these things in writing, get them on the record. it makes people respond in a different way. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to deal with the next question that was given to us about how to work with a 15-year-old girl, about talking to strangers and about appropriate dating and those kinds of things. Bless your heart. This is a very scary area that I am not ready to go into as a parent, and I can understand why it would seem like it's a little overwhelming. So we're going to get some advice about that and some suggestions about things that we might consider. Stick with us. More with Evelyn Gould after these messages.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the health care benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign the petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon. What you're gonna do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're gonna grab one end and then twist it, and then take the two ends and join them together, and then tape it together. And then I'm gonna flip it around and take another piece of tape. And what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA, the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite. With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest right now is BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould. We thank you so much for being here. We had a viewer write in last week, and her question was, how can you teach an Asperger's 15-year-old girl about talking to strangers and age-appropriate dating? And as I said before the break, this is an area that is particularly scary. Anytime we're talking about dating and those kinds of issues, whew, and I can't even imagine, there's a whole host of things to worry about with boys, but there's another host of things to worry about with girls. And I want to preface this by saying that we can never give child-specific or teenager-specific, as the case would be, advice, because we can't know everything about what the skill level is. So we were going to speak in generalities, but there are some generalities and some suggestions of things that you might consider when this is what you're talking about. My eyes get big because it's scary.
I know. Well, there's two different, they're kind of two different things. There's the talking to strangers, and then there's the dating thing. I mean, they sort of go together.
Yeah.
Because usually when you start dating someone, you don't know them very well. They're not always someone that familiar to you. But with the strangers thing, I mean, I guess the first thing to do is to try and establish whether your kid can distinguish between a stranger and someone they know. And then what the types of thing that we can do is sort of draw like a visual of circles. And you have the child in the middle, and then you have the immediate family around the outside, and then you have like friends, and then you have acquaintances, and then you have strangers, and trying to get your child to place different people in the different areas to see if you can see if she can distinguish between who's a stranger and who's not. So that's the first step, and I would make sure there's that.
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. I would guess that we can absolutely do this with a 15-year-old, but we could do this with a much younger child. So we're working towards knowing that eventually they are going to be 15.
Absolutely. So the first thing your child needs to be able to do is to know whether the person's familiar or not.
Okay.
And then once they're able to do that, then we work on certain rules, establishing certain rules for the different circles of people.
Nice.
And I mean, you can do all sorts of things. I really think it's helpful to have the visuals and to draw them out rather than just have a conversation, because our kids tend to have a hard time with retaining just oral information, and having it on a piece of paper or something is really helpful. And you can color code them and stuff like that, and then have different rules. So you're going to want to have certain rules for strangers. Like if a person is a stranger, then I can say hi to them, but I shouldn't. You know, if it's in school, then I might say hi to them. But if it's out in the community, I'm not going to talk to them. Whatever you decide your rules are.
And they're going to be different with different ages and different kids.
Exactly.
But for instance, I can say hi to a stranger, but I can't walk away with them.
Right, exactly. So you're going to want to establish the rules that you want to put in place for your kid that are appropriate for their age. And that might also include certain things about, like, if I don't feel safe, then this is what I should do.
Right.
Like whether that's call mom, call 911, whatever you want to put in place. Or if someone's walking close to me, I can cross the street. Like just certain strategies for your child. So we talked a little bit in the break about maybe having your child like have a decision tree, and I've seen some quite cool ones on the iPad, like little apps that people have made with a little visual, like what I should do. Because sometimes our kids have a difficulty with making a decision in the moment. So in this way, you can have like, is it a stranger, yes or no? It's a stranger, yes. And then like kind of like what to do, don't talk to them, or walk away, or whatever your decision tree might be, or I don't feel safe. You can practice this with your kid. You know, I don't feel safe, what do? I can call 911, I can cross the street, I can do these things. And I mean, obviously in a split moment, you might be thinking, oh, I can't have my child thinking and going through this decision tree. They need to just make that decision. But this is really helpful for practicing.
Yeah, we've practiced a fire drill by doing these kinds of things, so why not practice this kind of thing?
Exactly, and then you can do the same types of things for dating as well, like having certain rules in a little decision tree, and like helping your child identify different feelings. So like feelings towards a friend versus somebody I have a romantic interest in, and then if I have a romantic interest in this person, like how to make an appropriate decision and what can I do. I really like this person, these are things I can do. I can tell them I like them, or I can call them, or I can text them, or I can ask them if they want to go to the movies, and then you can have like little sort of options for what to do.
Fascinating. And you know what I also hear in doing this, what the benefit of this is that when you set up the rule and say, well, you know, you're not allowed to leave with somebody, or you're not allowed to take food from somebody, that I can imagine that then we can teach the other side of it too. And if the person doesn't accept that, they should also know that there are rules and that they should not behave this way. And if they're not behaving the way they should, and you're starting to feel funny about it, that you should be feeling funny about it.
Exactly.
So that they also start to gauge whether somebody's trying to take advantage of them.
Right. So,
really important.
And then, of course, there's other things that go along with that, like learning how to read body language, or learning personal space, like boundaries in terms of when someone's too close. You know, it's okay for my mom to be this close to me, but it's not okay for a stranger to be this close to me. So I think boundaries is really important.
Yes.
And how just helping our kids identify when they're in a situation that's not okay.
Yes.
I think those are the key things.
And especially now with social networking the way that it is. You know, my son for the first time the other day asked if he could be on Facebook. And I went, you know, I haven't had to do, but he does interact with people sometimes in a video game, and we have very specific rules about that, and about what he's allowed to say to them, what they're allowed to say to him, and what he's to do if ever, you know, any of those lines are crossed. But I imagine that as they get into teenage years, and that there needs to be whole sets of rules about what we say or do, and allow to be said to us on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram and all these other things that they have that I don't completely get. Because I know that a lot of the dating seems to generate from the internet sites, but we can keep those rules going for those things as well.
Yeah, and you know, we have taught we do teach these types of things, and we do work with kids on these types of problems from all ages, of like really young kids with strangers up to teens, and we can kids are good at it, like they can learn these things. I think it's just about sitting down with them, providing the visual supports, and helping them make decisions, and using the decision trees and the rules and things like that, and keeping everything very simple.
Fascinating. Great advice. I love this idea of the circles and having the different rules for each rung in the circle.
It can seem really overwhelming because dating is like a massive umbrella for all sorts of things.
Yes,
going
for
on.
everyone.
So it's about breaking it down and identifying what are the skills that I need to teach my child to be able to navigate this system. So whether it's like reading body language, identifying my feelings, different types of feelings for different relationships, identifying who's a stranger versus who's not, and boundaries, and like what I can say, what I can do, you know, all those types of things. There's a lot of things, but they're all teachable whenever you approach them one at a time.
And I'm also struck by the fact that there are many neurotypical kids who could benefit from these same lessons.
Absolutely.
Really awesome. Well, I thank you so much. We're out of time, but thank you so much, and we'll look forward. If you have more questions about that, if you're the parent who wrote in, and if you want to know more, feel free to write back. But great, great advice. We're going to thank you and say goodbye to you. We're going to take a break and come back to finish out the show. Stick with us. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism. My beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke? Guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some gases?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live. It's time to finish out the show, but I want to remind all of you that we were able to interview Temple Grandin last week. We are going to be showing you more of the interview as the different edited pieces come out and are available, but we had her, Suzanne Oshinsky, who is brilliant. She is the producer for both the A Word and Smarty, the arts and crafts segment on the show, had the foresight to bring a book and have her sign it. So we have Thinking in Pictures, My Life with Autism, signed by Temple Grandin, and Suzanne also brought some cows. So we have here a cow signed by Temple Grandin. It's a fabulous, fabulous thing that's been adorning our set all week long as a reminder to all of you that you can own the cow or the book. I feel like I'm doing a PBS thing for sponsorship. We're not. But you can own the cow or you can own the book, and we're not asking for any money. You'll need to go to our Facebook page and check out there's 3 things that you need to do to be entered in the contest to win either the book or the cow. The first thing is you need to, if you haven't already, like our Facebook page. It only takes a second. It's a click. It's not the end of the world. You need to share on your Facebook page the petition, the link to sign the petition, where people are wearing infinity ribbons to remind them that with ABA, the possibilities are infinite. So share that on your Facebook page and then sign up for our free newsletter, which I think is a really easy thing to do, and that you might really enjoy it because it'll have programming notes about things that are coming up and ways to participate in new contests. So there's nothing that we're asking you that will cost you anything. And on Friday, we will be giving away the cow and the book to one person who is one person per item that has done all those things. A couple of things. I can't believe already we're talking about Wednesday, but tomorrow, very exciting day around here. We're going to have Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grandpichet will be back with us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and you can watch that live. Please send your questions in now. Now's a great time, we're discovering, because the questions that I get now are the ones that will start out the show along with today's question about controlling anger. And so that's the first hour of the show. And then the second hour of the show, I'm joined by Nancy Alspaugh Jackson, who is the executive director of Act Today. And our special guest during tomorrow's show is Peter Bell from Autism Speaks. He will be with us to talk about advocacy and some of the different things that Autism Speaks is doing in our nation's capital to really sway things and make it possible for more children to get access to more services. So that will be tomorrow. If you have questions for Peter Bell of Autism Speaks, you can also be sending those in to us now. All of that and more will be happening tomorrow. Don't forget to enter the contest for the book or the cow. Very, very exciting. And while you're on our Facebook, check out and see. You can see where you can answer the question of the day, and you can see some of the different things, how people interact. I want to thank you for your time here, and remember to watch us live tomorrow on www.autism-live.com. A lot of exciting stuff that happens on Wednesdays. Look forward to it and look forward to seeing you there then. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.